It was a quiet Tennessee night in the court of a neighborhood, the kind of evening that whispers calm before bedtime. But peace quickly shattered into panic when the sound of gunshots pierced the air. Just minutes later, first responders would discover a chilling scene. An 18-year-old college freshman, full of hope and promise, slumped inside a parked car, fatally wounded. That young man was Corey Adams, a rising star in football, gone far too soon. Corey wasn't just another name in a tragic headline. He was a son, a teammate, a friend, and a dreamer. A defensive end at Ole Miss, he had only just begun writing his college story. For a young man who fought his way to success on and off the field, his life ended not in a blaze of glory on game day, but in a heartbreaking act of violence that has left his family and community in stunned silence. Just months earlier, Corey was celebrating a high school graduation with hopes of changing his life and the lives of those around him. He was known for his fierce plays on the football field, but also for the warmth and leadership he showed in the locker room. Corey didn't just chase touchdowns. He carried the dreams of his family, his hometown of New Orleans, and every young athlete who's been told they're too small, too slow, or too late. And yet, on the night of July 19th, his bright future was abruptly stolen. The Shelby County Sheriff's Office received a call at around 10:14 p.m., leading them to Fern Glade Cove. There, Corey was found inside a car, suffering from a gunshot wound. Despite life-saving efforts, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Four others were also injured but survived. For those who knew him, and even for those just learning his name, the grief is deep, and the questions are endless. Who could have done this? Why would anyone want to harm such a promising young man? As details began to emerge, what became clear was this: Corey Adams' death was not just a personal loss, but a gut punch to an entire community that had poured love, hope, and belief into his journey. His passing leaves behind aching hearts, and a spotlight on the everyday tragedies that never make national headlines until it's too late. In this video, we'll walk you through what happened on that tragic night, who Corey was as a person and athlete, and how his death has shaken not just Ole Miss, but all who see themselves or their children in his story. We'll look at the investigation, the unanswered questions, and the powerful wave of love and remembrance now rising in his name. This isn't just about crime, it's about compassion. It's about remembering Corey Adams as more than a victim. So take a moment, breathe deeply, and join us as we tell the story of a young man whose light was dimmed too early, but whose legacy is just beginning to shine. Before his name was on headlines, Corey Adams was a determined kid growing up in New Orleans, a city that tests the spirit and sharpens resilience. From an early age, Corey learned to move with quiet determination. Life wasn't always easy, but he never let that define him. Instead, he poured his energy into the one thing that always gave him purpose: football. Corey had raw talent, but it was his work ethic that set him apart. Coaches noticed how he stayed late after practice, how he showed up early on game day, and how he led by example even when no one was watching. He wasn't loud or showy, he was steady, reliable, a teammate you could count on, and a young man who never let his circumstances limit his ambition. He earned his way to Ridgeway High School in Memphis, Tennessee, where he truly began to shine on the field as a defensive end. Corey's performance wasn't just about tackles or stats. It was about heart. He played each down like it could be his last, because he knew that every game was a step closer to the life he dreamed of for himself and his family. That dream took a huge leap when he was recruited to play football at Ole Miss, one of the most respected programs in the SEC. For a young man from modest beginnings, stepping onto that college campus was more than just a career move. It was a symbol of perseverance, of breaking generational barriers, of becoming the first in a family to walk a different path. Corey had only just begun his freshman year. He was preparing to take on the season, learn the system, build bonds with teammates, and settle into the rhythm of student-athlete life. His future was wide open, whether it was the NFL down the road or giving back to his community through mentorship and coaching. People around him saw the promise in his eyes. Friends and former coaches often described him as humble and focused. He wasn't chasing fame. He was building a foundation. He wanted to make his mother proud, show younger kids from his neighborhood what was possible, and maybe even give back through youth programs once he made it big. Corey was the kind of young man you rooted for, not just because of his talent, but because of his character. When news broke of his death, it wasn't just about losing a promising athlete. It was about losing a bright light, a role model, a symbol of how far determination and heart can carry you. Corey Adams represented a future that many young men like him dare to imagine. And now, tragically, that promise has been stolen, but the legacy he left behind still echoes in locker rooms, classrooms, and in the hearts of everyone who believed in him. It was just after 10 p.m. on July 19th, a Thursday night in Cordova, Tennessee, a quiet suburb outside Memphis. In a tucked-away residential cul-de-sac, the evening calm was shattered by the unmistakable crack of gunfire. The sound echoed through Fern Glade Cove, jolting neighbors from their routines and prompting a frantic wave of emergency calls. In moments, what should have been an ordinary night turned into a scene of chaos and heartbreak. When deputies from the Shelby County Sheriff's Office arrived, they were directed to a parked car. Inside that vehicle was 18-year-old Corey Adams, unresponsive and bleeding from a gunshot wound. He wasn't alone. 4 others in the car had also been injured. But Corey's injuries were the most severe. First responders rushed to his side, but despite their best efforts, Corey was pronounced dead at the scene. In the span of minutes, a young life filled with hope was gone. Those who witnessed the scene described a grim and surreal atmosphere. Flashing lights illuminated the quiet street, casting eerie shadows against the homes. Officers quickly secured the area, trying to determine what had just happened and whether the threat had passed. As paramedics tended to the injured, neighbors stood on porches or behind curtains, watching in disbelief, some of them quietly weeping. The news traveled fast. Within hours, social media began to light up with heartbreak and disbelief. Friends and teammates couldn't believe it. How could someone who had just begun his college career, someone who beat the odds to make it to Ole Miss, be the victim of such senseless violence? Phone calls were made. Tears were shed. And slowly, the reality began to set in. Corey Adams was gone. Investigators immediately began working to piece together the circumstances of the shooting. What was Corey doing there? Was this targeted or random? Was it a dispute? A misunderstanding? The questions poured in faster than the answers. The sheriff's office confirmed that no arrests were made at the time, but detectives were following leads and interviewing witnesses. The presence of multiple victims made the case even more complex and urgent.
These are looking for the person responsible for a mass shooting happening in the Cordova subdivision. 5 people were shot, including an Ole Miss football player who was killed. Thanks for watching the news at 5 o'clock. I'm Shay Arthur. WREG's Queetra Wilborn spoke to people living in that neighborhood who described the scene as chaotic.
Young guys were running around and there was a chaos.
People living in this quiet Cordova subdivision are looking for answers after a massive shooting left 4 people injured and 1 dead. Shelby County deputies were called to investigate a shooting outside a home on Fern Glade Cove around 10 p.m. Saturday. On the way to the scene, they stopped a vehicle at the intersection of Forest Hill Irene and Walnut Grove. Inside was 18-year-old Corey Adams suffering from a gunshot wound. Despite desperate attempts to save his life, Adams died on the scene. Deputies say they learned 4 other gunshot victims were taken to nearby hospitals. All are expected to be okay.
It looks like they were shooting each other.
One man we spoke to who didn't want to be on camera says the home where the shooting happened appeared to be hosting a pool party. He says multiple cars lined the street.
I was watching TV in my living room right here and then heard big shots. Huge shots. Yeah, I thought there's a big attack happened, and I told my children to just lay on the ground, turn off all the lights. And definitely there was a big, fear.
By the time deputies arrived, he says everyone attending the party was gone. Shell casings were scattered across the scene, and at least 1 home was hit by several bullets. The University of Mississippi Athletics Department says Adams, who is from New Orleans, Louisiana, is a freshman on the football team. In a statement on social media, his former high school football team posted, "Corey Adams was more than a football player. He was a friend, brother, son, student, and all-around great young man. This wasn't supposed to be the end of his story." At this time, a motive has not been released. Reporting for your news leader from Cordova, Queetra Wilborn, WREG News, Channel 3.
A tragic case there, and the University of Mississippi football team released a statement saying, in part, "We are devastated to learn that Corey Adams, a freshman on the team, passed away last night in Cordova, Tennessee. While our program is trying to cope with this tragic loss, our thoughts are with his loved ones during this incredibly difficult time." So far, no one has been arrested. If you know anything, the sheriff's office is asking you call Crime Stoppers at 901-528-CASH.
As the community waited for more details, the focus turned to supporting those affected. Counselors were made available for teammates and students. Coaches at Ole Miss released statements expressing their grief and support for Corey's family. His high school football coach described him as a kid who stayed out of trouble and had everything in front of him. And perhaps the most painful part, he wasn't even involved in anything dangerous that night. He was simply in the wrong place at a devastatingly wrong time. In moments like these, there are no easy explanations. Just silence, sorrow, and a hollow feeling left in the spaces where someone so loved and full of life once stood. The immediate response may have come from authorities and paramedics, but the real response, the one still unfolding, is from a community trying to understand how to carry on in the wake of such an unthinkable loss. Corey's death wasn't just an incident. It was a heartbreak that sent shockwaves far beyond the scene of the crime. In the days following the shooting that claimed the life of Corey Adams, investigators moved swiftly but carefully. The Shelby County Sheriff's Office knew the weight of the case they were carrying. This wasn't just another report of gunfire in the night. This was the loss of an 18-year-old student athlete, someone who was admired by many and had his future just starting to bloom. The urgency was unmistakable. Detectives began collecting every detail they could from the scene and the people who were there. The car where Corey was found became a crucial focal point. Forensic experts meticulously combed through it, gathering shell casings, fingerprints, and any other trace evidence that could help identify the shooter. Blood patterns, bullet trajectory, and cell phones left behind were all examined for clues. Investigators knew that even the smallest overlooked detail could be the key to understanding what truly unfolded that night. Meanwhile, the other 4 individuals who had been in the vehicle with Corey, each of them injured but alive, became vital witnesses. Law enforcement spoke with them as soon as they were medically stable, hoping to reconstruct the moments leading up to the shooting. Were they followed? Was there a dispute? Did anyone recognize the attacker? These first-hand accounts, though blurred by trauma and shock, helped sketch the framework of what might have gone wrong. Surveillance footage from nearby homes and traffic cameras was pulled to trace the group's movements and any possible vehicles or people in the area during the time of the shooting. Residents were asked to come forward with doorbell camera footage, and a call was put out to the public to share any relevant tips. The community, shaken by Corey's death, responded with quiet urgency. No one wanted his story to end in a cold case. Investigators also looked into Corey's background and that of the people he was with, not to assign blame, but to understand context. Everything mattered. Text messages, recent social media posts, even his phone records. The goal wasn't to question Corey's character. By all accounts, he was an upstanding young man, but to determine if someone else had brought danger into his orbit. Was this a personal conflict, a mistaken identity, or something even more random and tragic? As of now, the investigation is still ongoing. No arrests have been made, and the sheriff's office has kept many details close to the chest to preserve the integrity of the case. But the message is clear. They are committed to finding justice for Corey Adams. His life mattered. His story matters. And the investigators working behind the scenes know they carry not just a case file, but the hopes of a grieving family and a heartbroken school community. Even in the absence of quick answers, what has emerged is a sense of unity. People coming together in faith that justice will come and that Corey's name will not fade into the background. This investigation isn't just about evidence. It's about truth, closure, and ensuring that a young man who gave his all to the world gets the dignity of a full, honest accounting of what happened to him. The shock of Corey Adams' death rippled far beyond the scene of the shooting. When word spread that the 18-year-old Ole Miss football player had been killed, it felt as if time stopped for everyone who knew him. He wasn't just a young man with dreams. He was living proof that dreams were possible. For his family, friends, coaches, and teammates, Corey's passing created a hole that no word could ever truly fill. At Ridgeway High School in Memphis, where Corey first made his mark on the football field, students and staff held moments of silence. His former coaches remembered him as a kind of player who always gave 110%, who asked questions, who wanted to improve not just as an athlete but as a leader. In their voices, you could hear the pride, but also the heartbreak. Corey wasn't supposed to be a memory. He was supposed to be the future. At Ole Miss, where Corey had just started his journey as a student athlete, the news hit like a thunderclap. His teammates, many of whom had only just begun to know him, mourned not only the loss of a teammate, but the loss of what could have been a brotherhood. Head coach Lane Kiffin released a statement extending condolences and reminding the team that Corey's life, though short, carried weight, purpose, and inspiration. His family, wrapped in grief, also shared their sorrow with quiet strength. Corey's mother, devastated by the sudden loss of a son, spoke of him as a pride and joy, a boy who had worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and dreamed of becoming something greater than his circumstances. She described him as respectful, determined, and deeply loved. Her voice trembled, but there was power in her pain, a mother grieving not only the loss of her son, but the promise he carried. Vigils were held in both Memphis and Oxford. Friends wore his jersey number. Candles were lit. Prayers were spoken. And as people stood together, grieving yet united, it became clear Corey Adams had left an imprint. He had inspired others simply by being himself, focused, kind, driven. And now, even in death, he was continuing to bring people together, reminding them of the importance of compassion, justice, and community. Online tributes poured in. Former teammates shared photos and memories. Coaches offered stories of his quiet leadership. Strangers, moved by the senselessness of his death, left messages of support. Rest easy, Corey. One tweet read, "Your fight inspired many. We won't forget you." Another message simply said, "Gone too soon. You mattered." Though Corey's time on this earth was brief, his legacy is anything but small. He embodied the power of persistence, the strength of character, and the quiet dignity of a young man on a path of purpose. His life is a reminder of what's possible, and his loss, though deeply painful, has sparked a call for peace, for justice, and for all of us to look out for one another just a little more. Corey may be gone, but the light he lit in others still burns. The news of Corey Adams' death sent a deep and painful shock through the football community, one that echoed far beyond Memphis and Oxford. This wasn't just the loss of a player. It was a heartbreaking end of a story that had only just begun. Corey was more than an athlete. He was a symbol of potential, hard work, and rising above adversity. Coaches, players, fans, and former teammates all felt the weight of his absence, and the silence it left behind on the field was deafening. At Ole Miss, where Corey had just begun his collegiate football journey, his absence was deeply felt. Though he hadn't yet played a game in the SEC, his presence in the locker room had already made an impression. Teammates described him as focused, quiet, but kind, a freshman who listened more than he spoke, and who clearly carried a weight of big dreams on his shoulders. The team gathered to remember him not just as a defensive end, but as a brother whose life was cut tragically short. Head coach Lane Kiffin and other staff members spoke about Corey's character, praising the dedication he showed in the early days of training. They saw in him the raw energy of a player ready to grow, someone who didn't take this opportunity for granted. His coaches had plans for him, not just to develop as an athlete, but as a leader. That future now lingers as a painful what if, a promise interrupted before it could be fulfilled. Back in Memphis, the football community that raised Corey also paused to grieve. His former high school coaches at Ridgeway High struggled to put the loss into words. They remember the hours Corey spent after practice, the way he helped lift up younger players, the quiet discipline that made him a captain both in spirit and in skill. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable, and that made him unforgettable. Across the state and even beyond, fellow high school and college athletes took to social media to express their shock and sorrow. Many of them had played against Corey or alongside him at football camps. One former rival posted, "You never think someone you lined up across from is going to be gone like this. He was a beast on the field, but a good soul off it." These words carried weight, not just because of who Corey was, but because of what his story now represented, a tragic reminder that no future is promised. Football programs across the region honored Corey with moments of silence and small tributes, from players wearing armbands to coaches dedicating games in his memory. The shared grief bonded teams in unexpected ways. For many, Corey's death brought home the reality that players, no matter how strong, how disciplined, or how gifted, are still vulnerable young men navigating real-world dangers off the field. In the end, Corey Adams left behind more than just stats or game film. He left behind a quiet legacy of heart, grit, and humility. His story has sparked renewed conversations within the football community about mentorship, mental health, and supporting young players beyond athletics. In his loss, a community of athletes, coaches, and fans have found unity, reflection, and a deeper sense of responsibility to one another. Corey may no longer be here, but his spirit still runs through the game he loved and through every teammate who now carries his memory onto the field. As we look back on the heartbreaking loss of Corey Adams, it becomes clear that this story is about far more than a single tragic moment. It's a reflection of what happens when promise meets pain, and when a young life full of light is suddenly taken away. Corey was a son, a teammate, a friend, and a dreamer. His journey reminded us of how bright the future can look when hard work and heart come together. And his loss reminds us just how fragile that future really is. This tragedy calls on us to pause and think more deeply about the environments our youth are growing up in. Corey did everything right. He kept his head down, stayed out of trouble, pursued his dreams, and surrounded himself with people who believed in him. But even that wasn't enough to shield him from senseless violence. His story raises uncomfortable questions about safety, opportunity, and how quickly a bright path can be cut short in the blink of an eye. For the young athletes watching this story unfold, there's a lesson in Corey's dedication. He didn't wait for opportunities. He earned them. He trained, studied, and sacrificed. His discipline was quiet but powerful, and even in the face of challenges, he never gave up. That kind of spirit doesn't disappear with death. It continues through the lives he touched and the inspiration he left behind. Young people can look at Corey's life and be reminded that hard work still matters, even in a world that sometimes feels unfair. There's also a message here for communities and institutions. Supporting young talent goes beyond just celebrating their wins. It's about creating networks of care, providing emotional support, mentorship, and guidance. When we lose someone like Corey, we're not just mourning a person, we're mourning what we, as a society, could have done better to protect and nurture them. For families grieving similar losses, Corey's story is heartbreakingly familiar. And while no word can truly ease that pain, his memory may offer small comfort. He mattered deeply. His life was not forgotten, nor was it lived in vain. In his short 18 years, he managed to inspire hope, pride, and love, 3 things that don't fade with time. To those watching and listening, we're reminded that tomorrow is never promised. Let Corey's story encourage us to check in on the people we love, to encourage the dreams of the youth around us, and to push for safer, stronger communities. Every life deserves a chance to rise, to grow, to fulfill its promise. And every voice, especially those silenced too soon, deserves to be heard. Corey Adams may no longer be here to tell his story, but through the people he touched and the legacy he leaves behind, his voice still echoes. And if we choose to listen, to act, and to care more deeply for the next Corey out there, then his light will continue to shine, guiding others down the path he walked with so much courage and grace. If Corey's story touched your heart, we invite you to stay with us just a little longer. In the next video, we explore the life of another young athlete whose dreams were tragically interrupted. Their journeys, though unique, remind us of how deeply rooted talent, hope, and hardship often are in our communities. Click the video on your screen now to continue learning about these powerful stories that deserve to be heard. For those interested in how violence impacts rising stars in sports, we've put together a special playlist filled with heartfelt, respectful tributes. Each video highlights a life lost too soon and the legacy they leave behind. From football fields to basketball courts, their stories remind us why remembering is more than just mourning. It's about continuing the work they started. If you'd like to understand how communities are stepping up to prevent violence and protect young lives, check out the documentary featured next. It focuses on real-world solutions, mentorship programs, and the power of showing up for our youth. We believe Corey would have supported efforts like these, and you can, too, by learning and sharing. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already. We cover stories like Corey's not for shock, but for connection. We believe in honoring lives, not headlines. By subscribing, you join a community of people who care about justice, humanity, and hope. Below this video, you'll find resources for youth advocacy, grief counseling, and support for families affected by gun violence. Whether you're a parent, a coach, a teammate, or just someone who wants to help, these links are a place to start. Sharing Corey's story is powerful, but taking action is even more meaningful. We also encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us how Corey's story impacted you. Did it remind you of someone? Did it inspire you to speak up, reach out, or simply reflect? Every comment adds to the memory and meaning of his life. Let's keep that conversation going with compassion and care. And finally, take a deep breath. These stories are heavy, but they're also full of purpose. Corey's light doesn't end here. As you move on to the next video, carry a piece of his story with you. Keep listening, keep caring, and above all, keep remembering that every life matters and every dream deserves a chance to rise.